Oh man, listen, man, listen. Like God has prepared a great message for you today, right? God has prepared a great message for you. Like I've been holding in this message for a while, and like God just like keep tapping me and keep telling me like, no, like I need you to tell the people this. Like I need for you to let my people know about this, right? So it's three things we're gonna talk about today, y'all. It's three things we're gonna talk about, and the three things are trust, belief, commitment, right? I need y'all to write that down, right? Trust, belief, commitment, right? It's three things, like, because I feel like those three things going to be so critical on our journey. Those three things going to be so critical to the success that God has for us, to the blessing that God has ordained for us. I feel like those three components, like, I think if you just miss even one of them, like the blessing, like you just missed the blessing, right? Like trust, belief, and commitment. Like those things are gonna take you so far on the journey, right? And we ain't even talking about like just like work at this point. Like we're just talking about having the trust, the belief, and the commitment to the thing that God told you. Right? Some of us been holding on to something that God has told us for a while, or we done did something that God told us to do, and we haven't received what we thought we should receive, and we lose trust. And then after we lose the trust, we lose the belief system that we had in the thing that God told us to trust in. And then we no longer are committed to the thing. We start being committed to the lack. We start being committed to the disbelief. We start being committed to the things the opposite of what God had told us to be committed to. And therefore, we never receive, like we never get a chance to receive and get the blessings that God has ordained for us because we lost trust. We lost the belief, and then we lost the commitment. Listen, y'all, like the one thing that you cannot control is God's timing, right? Like, let's write that down too. The one thing you cannot control is God's timing. Like, the worst thing you can do is do something and try to put a time on it. Like, I feel like and I made that mistake, right? I feel like the worst things you can do is like do something and then put a time limit on it, especially like it's on God's timing and nobody knows when that is. Like nobody knows when God is going to bless us. Like nobody knows when, like nobody knows, like that's the thing that that Abraham and Sarah, like that's the thing they got confused, right? Like they got confused their time with God's time when they kept questioning God, like God, when we gonna have a baby? Like God, you talking about we're gonna have a baby? Like we too old in age to even conceive. Like we're not gonna have a child. And God's like, listen, in due time. Like you can't rush my timing. Like God timing is perfect timing, but nobody knows when that time is. We just have to have the trust, the belief, and the commitment. Right? So watch this. Like you really can't have trust and belief. Watch this. Your trust and belief get tested because you really don't know. Come on, man. Like your trust and belief get tested because you really don't know. Just think about this, right? If I tell you to go into the woods and like you don't really know what's going on, but I say like, do you trust me? You say, yeah, I trust you. And I tell you go into the woods, then you be like, hey, what's going on? Like what's in the woods? Like what I'm expecting. Right? You really don't trust me then because like that's the whole purpose of trust. Like you really don't know, but you just trust and believe in me so much that you're just gonna take the action. You feel me? Like God told you to start that business and you got all the questions. Like, what about my credit score? What about the money? What about the funding? What about my target audience? Like what about this and what about that? I'm like, God, like, what is trust and belief? You say you trust and believe me. I just need you to take action. Right? Like trust and believe, like that's the purpose of being like trust. Like that's the purpose of trust. I really don't know. I really don't understand, but I trust and believe you so much. I'm going to commit to this thing and I'm going to be dedicated. Right? And I tell people like, bruh, I remember when I first got started on my journey, when I first started building my brand now, like God just say do it. And I just had to trust and believe. And then I also had to have the commitment. Because boy, let me tell you something. There are going to be some days, there are going to be some weeks, there are going to be some months where you just not feeling it. And there are going to be some weeks and some days where you're not like as motivated as you were when you first started. There's gonna be some days and some weeks where you like man, like bro, like I don't even want to be on this journey no more. Like man, like when, like so watch that. I had to realize the thing, what I was doing, I was so focused on the results and not the work. God said, I just need you to focus on doing the work, son. You too focused on the results. Like, let me take care of that. Let daddy take care of the results. And you just focus on being obedient. You just focus on doing my work. You just focus on being obedient. Right? Like that, like you worrying about the wrong things, son. You so result orientated. Where like what about like what about falling in love with the process? What about falling in love with working alongside me? What about falling in love with me? Like, what about falling in love with God and just staying committed to the journey no matter how long it takes? What about that, y'all? Like, what about just falling in love with who you're becoming instead of what you're getting? What about the blessing on who you're becoming by going on this journey with God? Like, what about that part of it? Like, what about like who are you becoming? What about all the mental toughness you done built up from being on this journey? Like, what about all the resiliency you done built up for being on this journey? Like, what about all the wealth taking principles you have took from like being on this journey? Like, what about those things instead of worry about what you're getting? Because like you will get the things, but it's gonna be on God's timing, and that's why your belief, your trust, belief, and commitment is so important. Because sometimes what can happen is we can quit too soon on the journey and never get the blessing. So like I think the worst thing you can do is work hard for something out of your life and not get it. Like I think just all because of your disobedience, all because you couldn't trust, all because you couldn't believe, all because you couldn't stay committed. Like I think like you worked so hard for something, and just because you couldn't stay committed just a year longer, just 10 more years longer, just 2 more years longer, and you quit too soon on the journey to receive the blessing. Like it's just like a farmer pulling up his crop too soon before it actually harvests. Because like that's the thing, like we don't know like when is the thing that God, the seed God has planted in us, like when has it fully harvested? Like that's the thing we don't know. So watch this, us as humans, what we will do, we will try to pull the crop up too soon, and the harvest not even ready. God said, yes, you got a good harvest right now, son, but it's not fully developed. Like I got more in store for you. And you trying to pull the crop up too soon, son. You trying to pull the crop up too soon, daughter. You trying to pull the crop up too soon before it fully harvests. And like I think that like we don't understand that God's timing is perfect timing. Whenever that timing is. And that's the beauty of it. Like that's why you got to have trust, belief, and commitment, because we don't know, right? That's why I'm so like that's why God is just telling me today. Like God said, I need you to tell my people trust, believe, and have commitment, because those three things are gonna be so vital on your journey. Because you don't know the day, nor the time, nor the hour that God is going to give you that blessing that you've been working so hard for, that you've been praying so hard for, that you stayed down and had the trust, the belief, and the commitment for. Like nobody knows. So that's why it's so important to like have trust. If you trust God, trust him. Like trust him through the bad time, trust him through the good time, trust him through the sideways, trust him through the recessions, trust him through the pandemics, trust him through getting put out, trust him through losing your job, trust him through your bad credit right now, trust him through when you don't understand it, trust him through when you trying to figure it out, trust him through, trust him, trust him, trust him, trust him. And then we got to have the belief. Right? Like, then we got to believe, like when God show you that vision, and when God show you that thing, like you got to believe that it's mine, because it is yours. They say if you can see it, you can believe it. And if you can see it, you can achieve it. If you see it, you believe it. And if you believe it, you can achieve it. Like you can get it. But it's going to take work. And it's going to take a whole lot of commitment. You can't be just committed to the results, and you can't be just committed to the circumstance. You got to be committed to the purpose. Whatever purpose God told you, like you got to be committed to that part of it. We can't be so worried about the results. We can't be so focused on what we're getting from it. We can't be so focused on the time frame, how long it's gonna take. We got to be committed to the sole purpose. Whatever purpose God has ordained for your life, like you got to be committed to that part of it, right? That because if I would focus on results, I would have been quit. I would have been quit. If I didn't trust God, I would have been gave up. If I didn't have the belief in what God told me, I would have been gave up. God say we gotta go. We're going after that $3 million net worth. We're going after that. I gotta have trust, belief, and commitment because having a $3 million net worth where I come from just like seems so obsolete. That's obsolete where I come from. Like that don't even make sense. Like you raised in Camilla, Georgia, in the project, raised up on a food stamp, had 2 kids at 17. Like that don't even make sense for you to have a $3 million net worth. They don't even make sense for you to be focused on wealth. Like that don't even make sense. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like some things don't even, like, you can't even fathom. So that's why, like, I knew at some point, like, I had to get closer to God on my journey. Like, I gotta continuously build my relationship with God because it's gonna take some lot of effort. It's gonna take a lot of trust. It's gonna take a lot of belief, and it's gonna take a lot of commitment. Like it's gonna take those things in order to accomplish the things that I want. And I had to realize too that my relationship has to get stronger with God because the blessing is bigger, because the responsibility is bigger. Listen, the stronger the responsibility, the stronger the relationship has to be. The stronger the responsibility, the stronger the relationship has to be. Watch this, y'all. It's some people that watch this. I want y'all to follow me here. There are some people, like just think about a company, right? A business, right? You got certain people that have access to the CEO. I want y'all to follow me. All right, you got certain people inside that business that has access to the CEO because of their responsibility. Come on, man. But because of their responsibility, they must have a stronger relationship with the CEO of the company. Because of their responsibility of the company, right? The chief financial officer has to have a strong relationship with the CEO because they have a stronger, like they have a bigger responsibility in the company. Therefore, that relationship with the CEO, which is the head of the company, has to be a stronger relationship. And you having a stronger and that bigger vision and that bigger purpose for God's kingdom, you must have a stronger relationship with him. That's good. I need y'all to think about that. Right? You must have a stronger, the bigger your responsibility, the stronger the relationship has to be. Because you got, like, God has gave you a big responsibility for his kingdom business. Therefore, you must have a stronger relationship and more is going to be expected from you because of the responsibility God has given you for the kingdom business. So that's why it's so important to not look at what other people are doing and compare yourself because their relationship, watch this, their responsibility might not be as big as yours. Therefore, their relationship does not have to be as big. As an employee in the company, you don't need some people, like we never met the CEO. Not saying, watch this, not saying your responsibility doesn't matter or your role doesn't matter. It just don't require the strong relationship that mine requires because our responsibilities are different. Our purposes are different. So it's so important to like stop looking at other people and focus on what God has given you and realize like God is expecting more out of you because of the responsibility he has given you for his business. Come on, man, that's so good. That's so good. Because of the responsibility God has given you for his business, he's expecting more from you. Because you're expecting more from the responsibility. Right? So, like, I want to get into the word. Let's get into the word. We're going to come out of Joshua 14, verse 10, y'all. Like, Joshua 14, verse 10. So, no, Joshua 14, verse 7. And we're going to go to a verse. So, we're going to go through 7 through 11. Joshua 14, verse 7 through 11. It say, I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to explore the land. Well, I want y'all to pay attention to that. My boy say, like, this is for like Caleb. Like, he was one out of the him and Jacob was one of him and Joshua was one of the two out of the Israelites that when they were sent over to explore the land that's flowing with milk and honey by Moses, they were one of the Israelites that came back like with a good report. They were one of the ones that believed in God wholeheartedly. Like they were one of the ones that believed in what God showed them and not what, and they didn't let what they seen with their physical eyes dictate what God told them. Right? They didn't let that. Right? You know how many of us let what's going on in our life keep us from God? You know how many times like we have let what we see with our physical eyes keep us from the vision? Because we so concerned on what we see and not what we see. Come on, man. Like we so focused on what we see and not what we see. And that vision is way more important than what you see with your physical eyes. Because I want you to know that like that didn't come from you. Like that revelation didn't come from you. Like that is God telling you, that is God showing you what he has for you. That is God showing you the end goal. But there are going to be some things that you're going to go through in order to get to the end goal because God has to prepare you, right? Don't nobody want a weak soldier running the kingdom. Nobody want a weak soldier, right? So God has to take you through some things in order to prepare you for the kingdom, prepare you for the business. God is going to take you through some things. So that's why we go back to it. Trust, belief, commitment. So watch this. He said, and I brought back him a report according to my convictions. But my fellow Israelites who went up with me made the hearts of the people melt in fear. See, God can show you a vision. God can show me a vision. It's not about what happened. It's about what we do that makes the difference. Because they all went and seen the land that's flowing with milk and honey, but they came back with two different convictions. I'm just blessed because I'm convicted on what God told me. I'm convicted on the vision. I'm convicted on the purpose. The problem is with some of you, you haven't been convicted. God has shown both of us a vision. God has gave both of us a purpose. God has gave all of us something to do. But watch this. You wasn't convicted. You believe more in the problem than you believe in God. You believe more in the Amalekites than you believed in God. You believe more in the Goliath more than you believed in God. You don't let this big thing in your life dictate you from the purpose, from what God told you. You haven't been convicted. So it's not about what happened. It's about what you do that makes the difference. He say, however, follow the Lord. He say, I, however, follow the Lord, my God, wholeheartedly. So on that day, watch this. That's why I say belief, trust, and commitment, y'all. When he say he followed God, he say, I, however, follow God wholeheartedly. That's commitment. That's trust. That's belief. I'm following God wholeheartedly with my whole heart, with my whole mind, and with my whole soul. When God told me that vision. When God say like you're gonna change so many of the people's lives with helping them with financial literacy, you're gonna change so many like young kids' lives with helping them with financial literacy. Like God told me you're gonna have that $3 million net worth. God told me you're gonna have that $2 million life insurance policy. You're gonna help 10 high school teach them about the stock market. You're gonna help 100 people make money in the stock market. And I was convicted. I was convicted. And when God showed me that vision, I was locked in and I was convicted. I had to trust and belief and commitment. He said, so on that day, Moses swore to me, the land on which your feet have walked would be your inheritance and that of your children forever. Because you have followed the Lord, my God, wholeheartedly. That's why I'm telling y'all. Some of us can't get what God got for us because we don't follow God wholeheartedly. We quit too soon. We give up too soon, or we let the problems in our life stop us or take us off the purpose. We let the thing, like we start believing in the problems more than we believe in God. We stop believing in what God told us and start believing in the things that we're physically going through. Because so you're not following God wholeheartedly. You'll put more emphasis on the problem than the solutions. You feel me? So watch this. He say, now then, just as the Lord promised, he has kept me alive for 45 years since the time he said this to Moses. While Israel moved about in the wilderness, so here I am today, 85 years old. I am still as strong today as the day Moses sent me out. I'm just as vigorous to go out in battle now as I was then. That's commitment. That's commitment. That is commitment. He said, God has kept me alive at 45 years. I'm now 85 years old. Listen, I was 40 when God made me that promise. I was 40 when I started following God wholeheartedly. And God has kept me alive 45 years plus 45 years since then. I'm now 85 and I'm still committed to the mission. I'm still committed to the purpose. He said, I'm just as vigorous as I was then, and I'm ready to go battle. Come on, man, that's trust. That's commitment, y'all. He said, now give me. Come on, man, I want y'all to watch that. He ain't asking, right? So like when God gives you that, like you got ownership and like you got ownership of that thing, right? He say, now give me because this is mine. Listen, whatever God shows you and whatever God told you, it is yours. And you got to be convicted enough to say it's mine. You got to believe it enough to say, like, give me what's me. He say, now give me this hill country that the Lord promised me that day. He didn't ask for that because it's like he know this is mine. Like I don't have to ask for it. God already told me it was mine. God already told me this inheritance is mine. God already told you that business is yours. God already told you that the wealth belongs to your family. God already told you that the health that you're praying for is yours. You got to watch this. You got to have ownership on it. You got to say, now give me that. And we got to be committed to the process. Imagine doing something when you were 40 and don't receive it till 45 years later. That's why I say we got to have trust, belief, and commitment. This is a perfect example of trust, belief, and commitment. So watch this. Even 45 years later, I'm still committed to God. I ain't switched up. Even 45 years later, I'm still committed to the purpose. Even though I haven't received the inheritance God promised me. That's a man that's not focused on results, but he focused on the work. And when you could just focus on the work part of results to take care of themselves, like let God gonna take care of that. You just continue to want to do my work. You just continue to have trust. You just continue to have belief. You just continue to have commitment. He say, you yourself heard then that the Anakites were there and the city was large and fortified, but the Lord helping me, I will drive them out just as he said. Then Joshua blessed Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and gave him Hebron as his inheritance. That is what you call trust, belief, and commitment at its finest. He wasn't worrying about how long it took. He wasn't focused on what he got. He was just focused on doing what God told him to do and following God wholeheartedly. And therefore, in the end, he was able to reap the harvest. And watch this, y'all. Most of us, when we do something and God shows us something or God promises us something, and we don't get that thing in a timely fashion that we think that we should have received that thing, we give up. We're no longer committed. And therefore we never received that thing. So imagine him. Imagine he would have had that mindset on, man, listen, it's been 45 years. Like, man, I'm not going out to battle for God no more. I'm not following God wholeheartedly no more. Like, man, God, I did that thing when I was 40. I ain't got that land yet. I'm like, imagine he stopped at 40 when he was 45 years old and say, man, I ain't got that land yet. I ain't walking with God no more. Like God, you lied to me. Like God, you told me I was gonna inherit this land because I followed you wholeheartedly. And I'm 45. It's 5 years later now. It's 10 years later now, and I ain't received that blessing yet. You know what I'm saying? Like, just imagine that. Imagine like God saying, like, imagine Caleb saying, like, hey, like God, I've been doing it. I'm 45 years old now. It's 10 years later, or it's 5 years later, or I'm 50 years old. It's 10 years later, and I haven't received that blessing yet. Like, I'm done. Like, I'm no longer trusting you. I'm no longer committed, and I'm no longer have the belief in you no more. He would have missed the inheritance. So that's why I want to tell you today: have trust, have belief, and be committed to the journey. Focus on the work, not the results. Cause God gonna take care of the results. The results will take care of themselves if you just do the work. And that is your purpose. Father God,